I want to tell you about the day I found out my best friend had been dismantling my career for 4 years. Not dramatically, not in some big confrontation scene where she finally confessed, and I threw a drink in her face. It was quieter than that. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and I was sitting at my desk with a lukewarm coffee, and I was looking at the version history on a shared drive folder that Reyna had accidentally left my access open on. Just a list of files, dates, edits, timestamps. And I sat there for about 40 minutes not moving, because what I was looking at didn't make sense with the person I thought I knew. The woman who drove me to urgent care at 11 p.m. when I thought I was having a heart attack, but was actually just having a panic attack about a quarterly review. The woman who screamed louder than anyone when I got the Delford account. The woman who texted me every single morning for 3 years, "Good morning, you're going to crush it today," without missing a single day. That woman had been forwarding my work to herself since month 4 of our friendship. Not borrowing, not referencing, forwarding, renaming, presenting. And the worst part, the part that kept me frozen at that desk, wasn't the stolen decks or the salary cap I'd find out about later, or even the job offer she'd already accepted at Callaway Group. The worst part was how many times I had almost known. How many times something felt off, and I talked myself out of it because the alternative was too ugly to look at. I'm Zoe Vance, I'm a brand strategist, and this is the story of how my biggest cheerleader was running a 4-year operation and how I burned it down without raising my voice once. I met Reyna Shaw on a Wednesday in October, 3 weeks after I joined Ember and North. I was eating lunch alone at my desk because I hadn't figured out the social geography of the office yet. Who sat where, who you could interrupt, who would smile at you, and then talk about you the second you walked away. I was new enough to be cautious, and senior enough that asking someone to show me the ropes felt embarrassing. So I ate my sad desk salad and pretended to be very busy. Reyna sat down across from me without asking. Not aggressively, just confidently, as she'd already decided we were going to be friends. And the formality of an introduction was just paperwork. She slid a coffee across the desk, said, "You look like you're doing the math on whether these people are worth trusting," and smiled like she already knew the answer. I laughed. It was so specific, so accurate. That was the thing about Reyna. She made you feel seen in a way that felt rare. Like she was paying attention to you specifically, in a room full of people. She could have paid attention to someone else instead. It's a quality that reads as warmth. I know now it was something else entirely, but back then, sitting in that office where I still felt like a stranger, it felt like oxygen. We were inseparable within 6 weeks. Same lunch spot, same after-work drinks on Thursdays, texting constantly, the kind of friendship where your phone becomes a running conversation that never fully closes. She was in client services, I was in strategy, so there was enough overlap that we worked together regularly, but not so much that the friendship felt like a professional arrangement. It felt real, separate, like something that belonged to us outside of Ember and North, even though it started there. She was funny in that dry, quick way that makes you feel funnier by proximity. She remembered everything. Your coffee order, the name of your difficult aunt, the exact thing your ex said that hurt the most. She filed it all away. I thought that was intimacy. 8 months in, I referred her for a senior position that opened up in my division. I didn't just submit her name. I walked into Marcus Webb's office and made a case. I told him she was the sharpest person I'd met at Ember and North, that she understood brand narrative in a way most people in client services didn't, that having her in the strategy would change the quality of our output. Marcus trusted my judgment. Back then, he trusted my judgment on most things. And Reyna got the role. She cried when I told her. Happy tears. Real ones, I thought. She hugged me in the parking garage and said, "I don't know what I did to deserve you." And I remember feeling that particular warmth of having done something genuinely good for someone you love. I didn't know then that she'd already emailed Marcus twice before I walked into his office. Not to apply. To describe the gaps in our strategy division, using details I had told her over Thursday drinks, and position herself as exactly the solution to problems she'd learned about through me. I recruited her. She'd already been moving in before I opened the door. Here's what being Reyna Shaw's best friend at work felt like. Every time you walked into a room, she was already smiling at you. Every time you presented something, she was the first to nod, the visible, encouraging kind of nod that other people in the room clocked and took as a signal. Every time Marcus said something vaguely positive about your direction, she'd find you after and say, "He loves you, you know that, right?" in this quiet, certain tone that made you feel steadier than you actually were. It felt like having someone permanently in your corner. What I didn't understand then was that corners are also where you get trapped. The first thing I noticed, and immediately unnoticed, was how meetings started shifting. Not dramatically, just slightly. I'd come in with a direction I'd been developing, something I'd been turning over for weeks, and somewhere in the middle of the discussion, Reyna would build on it so fluently, so naturally, that by the end, the room was looking at both of us when they talked about the idea. Not just me, both of us. I told myself that was collaboration. That's what you do with someone you trust. You build together. I told myself that for almost 2 years. The second thing was smaller. A comment Marcus made in passing after a strategy review. Reyna mentioned you've been stretched thin lately. Just want to make sure you're doing okay. I remember standing very still when he said it. I wasn't stretched thin. I was producing more than anyone on the team. I was in the best professional groove of my life. I smiled and told Marcus I appreciated the check-in. And then I went to find Reyna. She looked genuinely confused when I brought it up. I just said you had a lot on your plate. I was being protective. She touched my arm when she said it. I believed her. That was the architecture of it. Every brick had a reasonable explanation. Every moment of wrongness came with a ready warmth that made you feel guilty for noticing. The promotion was the thing that should have woken me up completely. Director of Brand Strategy, Marcus had told me in November, not formally, but in that way senior people telegraph decisions before they're official, that I was the direction they were moving. I'd built half the frameworks the team ran on. The Delford account alone had generated enough revenue to justify the title 3 times over. By February, the role went to an external hire. Marcus pulled me aside and said the board wanted a fresh perspective, that it wasn't a reflection of my contributions, that my time was coming. He used the word patient twice. I nodded and said I understood, and went home and sat in my car in a parking garage for 20 minutes. Reyna texted me that night. "This place doesn't deserve you. We're getting drinks." No arguments. I went. She ordered my drink before I sat down, remembered exactly what I needed, listened to everything I said with her whole face. By the end of the night, I felt better. Seen, steadied. I didn't find out until much later that she had told Marcus 3 weeks before the decision, that she had concerns about Zoe's readiness for a director-level role given some patterns she'd been noticing. She came to those drinks already knowing what she'd done. She ordered my drink, she let me talk, and she sat across from me with that warm, certain smile and absorbed every word I said about feeling overlooked. Taking notes? The thing about gaslighting yourself is that you get very good at it. Every time something felt wrong, I had a system. I'd locate the reasonable explanation, attach it firmly to the feeling, and move on. It's not gaslighting if you're doing it to yourself, right? It's just being fair, being rational, not being the kind of person who invents problems in perfectly good situations. I was so committed to being that person that I almost missed everything. It started with language. Small things first. A phrase I'd used in a strategy brief showed up in Reyna's client presentation 2 weeks later. I noticed it, felt a flicker of something, and immediately buried it. We talked constantly. Of course, our language blended. That's what closeness does. I'd probably borrowed things from her without realizing it. Then it was the Harmon pitch. I had been developing the Harmon rebrand concept for 6 weeks. Nights, weekends, and an entire notebook filled with directional thinking that I hadn't formalized yet because it wasn't ready. I'd walked Reyna through the rough framework one evening, sketching it out on a bar napkin, the way you do with someone you trust completely, because I was excited, and she was there, and that's what we did. 3 weeks later, Marcus praised Reyna in a full team meeting for her fresh strategic direction on Harmon. I felt the floor shift. I didn't say anything in the meeting. I smiled. I wrote the date down when I got back to my desk. I don't know exactly why I wrote it down. I wasn't investigating yet. I wasn't even fully conscious of what I was doing, but something in me understood that I needed to start keeping records even before I knew what I was recording. That instinct saved me later. The napkin thing I could explain away. The language thing I could explain away. But then I bumped into Derek from client services in the kitchen, and he said something that I couldn't explain away no matter how hard I tried. He said, "Hey, is everything okay with you? Reyna mentioned you've been going through something." I had not been going through something. I smiled at Derek and said everything was fine, and walked back to my desk and sat down very carefully, like the floor might not hold. I started paying attention differently after that. Not loudly, not obviously, just differently. I want to be clear about something. I didn't want to find what I found. Every time I opened a new folder, pulled a new thread, cross-referenced a new date, there was a part of me genuinely hoping I was wrong, that there was an explanation, that I was the paranoid one, the ungrateful one, the person who couldn't accept that a friend could just be a friend without an agenda. That part got quieter the deeper I went. It started with the shared drive. Reyna had a folder she used for collaborative projects, one I still had access to from the Delford account. She'd forgotten to restrict it when she moved files around. Inside was a subfolder, simply labeled Archive. Inside that were 73 files. My briefs, my decks, my strategic frameworks. Renamed. Reyna Shaw, Harmon Direction. Reyna Shaw, Q3 Brand Architecture. Reyna Shaw, Delford Positioning. My work. Her name. Dating back 3 years. I didn't move, I just kept clicking. Methodically. The way you do when your brain needs to stay functional, and emotion is a luxury you can't afford right now. Then I found the salary thread. A forwarded email chain is buried in the archive. Reyna had been in a casual conversation with someone in HR, framed as friendly, concerned, collegial. In it, she'd mentioned, offhandedly, almost parenthetically, that she didn't think Zoe would leave over compensation, that she'd mentioned being not motivated by money, and seemed happy where she was. She'd quoted me almost exactly. A thing I'd said during a vulnerable conversation about not wanting to become someone who chased titles. HR had used that assessment in my last 2 compensation reviews. I had been underpaid for 2 years, because I once told my best friend what I actually valued. Then I found the resignation draft. Dated 6 weeks out. A senior strategy role at Callaway Group. The offer letter was attached. The title was 1 level above the promotion I never got. The portfolio attached to her application contained 14 pieces of work. I had originated 11 of them. I closed my laptop. I went to the bathroom. I ran cold water over my wrists, the way you do when you need your body to understand that this is real and you have to stay in it. Then I came back to my desk, and I searched for Talia Osei. Talia picked up on the second ring. I hadn't rehearsed what to say. I'd found her through a LinkedIn rabbit hole. Former brand strategist at a firm called Meridian Creative, overlapping with Reyna's tenure there by exactly 2 years. Her profile was sparse. Consultant now. Independent. The kind of profile that reads like someone who left corporate and didn't look back. I told her my name. I told her where I worked. I told her I had a mutual connection named Reyna Shaw and that I needed 10 minutes. 3 seconds of silence. Then Talia said, "How bad is it?" Not a question, a calibration. I told her about the drive folder, the renamed files, the salary thread. The resignation draft includes 11 of my pieces in the portfolio. I kept my voice even. Clinical. The way you talk when you're holding something very heavy and you can't afford to feel the weight of it yet. When I finished, Talia was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "She used the bar napkin thing with you too, didn't she?" I stopped breathing. She told me everything. Same entry. Reyna had joined Meridian through a referral. Talia's referral, Talia's advocacy, Talia's reputation on the line. Same warm landing, same inseparable first year. Same language migration, same meeting dynamic, same gradual fog where Talia kept almost knowing and then talking herself out of it. The pitch that ended it for Talia was called the Voss rebrand. 8 weeks of her work, Reyna had presented a version of it to a client Talia hadn't met yet, a meeting Talia didn't know existed, and walked out with a commendation from the CEO. When Talia raised it, she was told she seemed territorial. Difficult. That collaborative environments required generosity. Reyna had cried in HR, said she was blindsided, said she thought Talia was struggling and had been trying to cover for her. Talia left 3 months later, not because she wanted to, because staying meant watching the thing she built get worn by someone else every single day. "She's very good," Talia said. Not bitterly, just factually. The way you talk about something that already happened and can't be undone. "I know," I said. "What are you going to do?" I looked at the resignation draft still open on my second monitor. Reyna's start date at Callaway was 5 weeks away. The HR reference call could come any day. "I'm going to let her finish packing," I said. "And then I'm going to make sure she has nowhere to go." Talia was quiet for a moment. "Call me if you need a second witness," she said. I wrote that down. The call from Callaway Group's HR came on a Thursday at 9:17 a.m. I know the exact time because I had been waiting for it. Not anxiously. The way you wait for something, you've already decided how to handle it. My lawyer, a woman named Claire Dutton who specialized in intellectual property and didn't waste words, had told me 2 days earlier that Reyna's offer letter, combined with the 14-piece portfolio containing my work, constituted a clear non-compete violation and potential IP theft. She used the phrase actionable on multiple fronts, and I wrote it down and slept better than I had in weeks. Claire had also said something else. She said, "Don't lie, don't attack, don't editorialize. Just be accurate." Accuracy is enough. I picked up on the second ring. The HR woman from Callaway was warm and efficient. She introduced herself as Dana. She said she was doing a routine reference check for a senior strategy candidate and confirmed she was speaking with Zoe Vance, listed as a professional reference. I confirmed my name. Dana asked how long I'd worked with Reyna. I told her 4 years. She asked about Reyna's strategic capabilities. I told her Reyna had a strong ability to synthesize existing frameworks and present them fluently. Dana asked if I could speak to Reyna's original thinking. I paused for exactly 1 beat and said, "I'd want to be careful about characterizing the sourcing of specific work. That's something your team may want to look into directly." Dana's typing stopped. I told her I could confirm dates, titles, and collaborative projects if that was helpful. I told her several high-profile pieces in Reyna's portfolio originated as joint projects and that I wouldn't want Callaway making decisions based on an incomplete picture of attribution. I said it the way you say something true in a meeting. Evenly. Professionally. Like I was doing her a favor. Dana thanked me, said she might follow up. I told her I was happy to provide documentation if needed. The call lasted 6 minutes. I sat for a moment after I hung up. Then I forwarded Claire the time-stamped drive folder, the salary thread, the resignation draft, and Talia's contact information. Claire had already drafted a formal letter to Ember and North's legal team. I had already sent Marcus Webb a meeting request, subject line, regarding attribution on several key accounts, for Friday at 10 a.m. I had also, quietly, over the previous 72 hours, rebuilt my contribution record. Every project, every original brief, every email thread shows the ideation origin. 41 documents, organized by date, by client, by project stage. Not a complaint file, a portfolio. My portfolio. Documented, time-stamped, and real in a way that Reyna's version of it never was. The last thing I did that Thursday was text Reyna. "Drinks tonight? I feel like we haven't caught up properly in weeks." She replied in 4 minutes. 3 exclamation points. Her usual order of warmth. "Yes, I literally need this. 7 p.m.? Perfect." I typed, I put my phone face down on the desk and went back to work. I didn't go to drinks. I never responded to that text again. Reyna found out in stages. That's the thing about a precise operation. It doesn't announce itself. It just closes doors. Quietly. One at a time. Until the person inside realizes every exit is sealed, and they can't identify the moment it happened. The first door was Callaway. She found out on a Monday. I know because she called me 4 times between 9 a.m. and noon. I let every call go to voicemail. The texts started after casual first, then confused, then with an edge she was trying to hide under concern. "Hey, are you okay? Haven't heard from you?" Then, "Did something happen? I feel like something's off." Then, "Zoe, call me." I read every single one. I responded to none. The second door was Marcus. Our Friday meeting lasted for 90 minutes. I walked in with the 41 documents, and I didn't lead with Reyna's name. I led with mine. I walked Marcus through 4 years of origination records, brief by brief, deck by deck, client by client. I showed him the version histories. I showed him the archive folder. I showed him the salary thread with my own words used to cap my compensation. Marcus is not a stupid man. He's an incurious one. There's a difference. He sat across from me, and I watched the incuriosity drain out of his face in real time as the pattern became undeniable. He said, "Why didn't you come to me sooner?" I looked at him evenly and said, "I wanted to be sure." He understood what that meant. He called legal before I left the building. The third door was the investigation. Ember and North's legal team moved faster than I expected. By Wednesday, Reyna had been called into a meeting she wasn't prepared for. I wasn't in the room. I didn't need to be. Claire was handling the IP documentation. The pattern across two companies was no longer a grievance. It was a record. I heard through someone on the team that Reyna had cried in the meeting, that she'd said she and Zoe had always shared work fluidly, that it was collaborative, that the lines were never that clear. Marcus had put the 41 time-stamped documents on the table. The lines were very clear. The fourth door was the portfolio. Callaway had already begun their own quiet inquiry after Dana's follow-up with Claire. The senior strategy role was rescinded by Thursday afternoon. The official reason given was position restructuring. Reyna would know what it meant. I was in a client meeting when my phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. "This was never about you. I hope you know that." It was Reyna. New number. Last attempt. I read it once. I thought about 4 years of good morning texts. The urgent care run. The parking garage. The drinks where she absorbed my pain about a promotion she had quietly made sure I'd never get. I put my phone in my bag. I went back to the meeting. I never responded. Nobody throws a party when a parasite leaves. That's the thing they don't tell you about this kind of ending. There's no catharsis scene, no moment where the music swells, and everyone who wronged you stands in a line and apologizes in the correct order. You don't get a ribbon. You don't get a speech. You just wake up one morning and realize the low-grade headache you'd been living with for 4 years is gone. And you'd been so used to it you'd forgotten it wasn't normal. That's what the first week felt like. Quiet. Disorienting. Like a noise had stopped that you'd stopped hearing. Marcus corrected my salary retroactively. 2 years of the difference, calculated and deposited without ceremony. He didn't make a speech about it. He sent an email with an attached document and a single line. "This should reflect your actual contributions." I should have seen it sooner. I read it twice. I didn't respond with warmth I didn't feel. I replied, "Thank you. I appreciate it." Sent. Done. The Harmon account was formally credited to me in the company records. So was the Delford positioning framework. So were 9 other projects that had been living in a gray area that turned out, under legal review, to not be gray at all. I didn't celebrate any of it. I just worked. Talia and I talked twice more after everything had settled. Not long calls, check-ins, the kind of conversation that exists between people who survive the same thing and don't need to over-explain it to each other. She'd started her own consultancy. Doing well, she sounded lighter than she had on that first call, and I told her so. She said, "You will too. It takes a minute." She was right. The hardest part wasn't the professional rebuild. The professional rebuild had documents and timelines and legal language and a process you could follow. The hardest part was the friendship-shaped hole that didn't fill in just because you understood what had been living inside it. I'd lost someone I loved. That someone had been a construction worker didn't make the love any less real. I'd given 4 years of genuine trust to a person who'd been running an operation the entire time, and somewhere in there, I had still laughed until I cried. Still felt seen. Still believed I mattered to someone completely. Grief doesn't check credentials before it moves in. I gave myself exactly as long as I needed to feel it. Then I stopped. 6 months later, I was offered the Director of Brand Strategy title. Not as a consolation. As a consequence of a client portfolio that was now fully documentably, undeniably mine. Marcus made the offer in person. I told him I needed 24 hours. I didn't need 24 hours. I just wanted to sit with it alone first. I accepted the next morning. I didn't text anyone. I didn't post anything. I drove to work, parked in the same spot I'd parked in for 4 years, and walked into the building. Reyna's desk had been empty for 3 months by then. Someone new sat there now. Young, eager, already making friends fast. I watched her laughing with a coworker by the coffee machine and felt nothing except a quiet, clean hope that she was exactly what she appeared to be. Then I went to my office, closed the door, and got to work.